Hello, I'm Susan Allen, National President and CEO of the U.S. Pan-Asian American Chamber of Commerce Education Foundation. We have a special guest today to talk about how President Biden's jobs plan will impact small business owners. Our speaker today has a very successful legal career in private and public services, including as law clerk to Associate Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the United States Supreme Court. He received his JD summa cum laude from New York University School of Law and his BA summa cum laude from Columbia University. Before law school, he served as policy advisor to U.S. Business Administration's Administrator Karen G. Mills of the U.S. Small Business Administration. It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you and welcome to our audience, Chief Counsel, Federal Transit Administration of the U.S. Department of Transportation, Subash Iyer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Susan, for that introduction, and good morning to everyone joining us today. I'm really happy to join you all on behalf of the Department of Transportation and FTA Deputy Administrator Nuria Fernandez to speak about the Biden-Harris administration's priorities and what lies ahead as we continue to support public transportation and small businesses across the United States. So since taking office, President Biden has acted to get America back on track by vaccinating families to beat the pandemic, delivering much needed help to American families, making transformative investments to rescue and rebuild our economy, and showing that government can once again deliver for its people. He also has rolled out the American Jobs Plan, a once-in-a-generation investment in infrastructure that is going to make America more competitive and help create millions of good-paying jobs. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. I'm excited to talk to you at this pivotal moment because at the Department of Transportation, we have a few significant priorities. One is to improve safety. Another is to promote equity. A third is to combat climate change. And most importantly, as the American Jobs Plan's name suggests, it's to create jobs. Now, on behalf of Secretary Buttigieg, Deputy Administrator Fernandez, and everyone at FTA, let me express my appreciation for the nation's small business owners and frontline workers who helped us get through the pandemic. We are grateful for your steadfast commitment to your communities during the pandemic, particularly when states first imposed stay-at-home orders. But throughout the pandemic, small businesses have been standing up for their communities and supporting their communities, and we need to do everything we can to support small businesses. As Susan mentioned, I worked at the Small Business Administration back in the Obama administration, so to me, this issue is personal. Now, as all of you are aware, 2020 was an incredibly difficult year for small businesses. According to the SBA, the number of small businesses was 20% lower in April of 2020 than the previous April. And unfortunately, the highest decline in the number of small businesses was experienced by Asian and Black business owners, with 16% of self-employed Asian Americans closing their businesses last year. Now, the economic outlook is improving, though. Thanks largely to bold acts signed by President Biden in April, provided support to accelerate our nationwide vaccination rollout. Following the president's work to speed up vaccinations, including his recent call to mobilize Americans to get at least one shot by July 4th, we are finally emerging from the pandemic, and we hope that many small businesses have been or will soon be able to reopen. The American Rescue Plan also saved transit jobs during the pandemic, and transit is essential to small businesses, both for their workers and for their customers. The American Rescue Plan provided $30.5 billion of much-needed relief to the transit industry, and that support helped keep public transit systems afloat, preventing service cuts, and meaning that workers could still get to their jobs and customers could get to your businesses. Now, the American Rescue Plan provided the funding to keep the economy afloat, but the American Jobs Plan fundamentally envisions a new future. That plan will provide direct support to small businesses, including by increasing access to federal contracts and by investing more than $110 billion in financing and technical assistance programs that would benefit small businesses, including small manufacturers. The American Jobs Plan will also address the shipping delays experienced by many small businesses by upgrading our nation's transportation infrastructure. The plan also calls for establishing and supporting universal broadband access, which is another thing that will help mom and pop shops improve their connectivity and reach new customers. Now, when FTA was asked to join at this week's conference, we were asked to speak specifically about issues of equity and opportunities for small business owners. And since taking office, the Biden-Harris administration has emphasized a commitment to advance racial equity and support underserved communities from day one, when President Biden signed an executive order on equity. The Secretary of Transportation, Secretary Buttigieg, has asked FTA to consider equity in everything we do, because the transit industry has a big part to play in creating a more equitable America. Transit has the power to open doors for everyone, urban and rural, rich and poor, and put everyone on a more level playing field. Households of color are currently twice as likely to use public transportation. And rather than making infrastructure decisions that divide communities, like designing highways that cut through majority-minority neighborhoods, this administration is focused on building connections. And Deputy Administrator Fernandez often speaks about providing access to opportunities through public transportation. So with the right strategic investments, transit can help businesses and communities build the connections that lead people to opportunity. We've been at the forefront of this for a while now, including through things like our ADA guidance and Title VI work, but we have more to do. And the executive order that the president signed presents an opportunity for us to think differently, to think about how we build back better. So there are opportunities to design and deploy innovative projects like autonomous vehicle systems and first mile, last mile solutions that consider the needs and participation of underserved communities from concept through implementation. And so I'm really excited about all of that. And one of the ways that we're working through these issues just in the first few months of this administration was on a notice of funding opportunity that presents an opportunity for businesses, including small businesses across this country, which was our funding opportunity for low or no emission buses. The notice specifically called for projects that'll improve air quality in parts of the country with poor air, and it plays a big role in helping us tackle climate change. So we're able to address two goals at once. In addition to that, we wanted to spotlight that across the country, transit agencies are doing a lot to combat climate change. Some have converted their buses to power, so they're powered by green technologies. Not only are those buses environmentally friendlier, but they're also quieter. And as they travel through downtowns across America, they emit fewer particles and make little noise, which is good news for main streets everywhere. We're looking to build on that with the American Jobs Plan. And this is not a moment to build back to where things were. We need to build back better. So I'm excited for the opportunity to speak with you all. And I'm happy to take a few questions as well. But I'm glad to be here with you all today.
Thank you, Subash. Thank you very much. Give us an overall an overview of the president's jobs plan. You talked about the Biden-Harris administration's priority on racial equity. And in view of what has happened, since COVID-19 hit us in 2020, the George Floyd killing, and of course, the anti-Asian attacks, particularly on East Asians. Could I ask you about the administration priority on racial equity? What are we doing at the FTA, if I may ask your transit administration's a question? What do you plan to increase access to opportunity for the America's minority community?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. First, I just want to start with one of the points that you sort of made, that there has been a rise in anti-Asian violence in America, and it is simply unacceptable. The president has been out in the forefront on this issue, making it clear that there is no place for hate in America. And at the Federal Transit Administration and at the DOT, we echo those sentiments. We need to do more to make sure that the epidemic of hate that is unfolding in pockets of our country really comes to an end. And it affects business owners, it affects communities, and it just needs to stop. And so I think that is an area where we are working closely with transit agencies. We currently partner with the National Transit Institute on violence prevention and other related efforts, and so we're working on those issues, and they're really important. Sort of pivoting more generally, small businesses have struggled throughout the pandemic, but minority businesses in particular have been hit hard, and we need to do a lot. So on the transit side, the American Jobs Plan will expand bus and rail service in new communities and neighborhoods. It'll help to address problems like transit deserts, where there are pockets of communities that have been disinvested in for far too long. And it'll allow us to connect neighborhoods that have been cut off from previous inequitable investments. For example, there's a $20 billion initiative in the American Jobs Plan to reconnect neighborhoods and ensure that new projects increase opportunity, advance racial equity and environmental justice, and promote affordable and accessible transit options. And as we're unveiling these ideas and proposals, we also are highlighting the importance of small businesses in planning, design, and construction of the new transportation projects that we hope to get underway. The administration also has a broader way of thinking about this across a number of sectors. And that was laid out in one of President Biden's early executive orders. It's called the Justice 40 Initiative. And the idea behind it is that 40% of the benefits of federal investment in clean transit, in clean energy, and other areas need to go to underserved and overburdened communities. And so I think that Justice 40 initiative is helping to frame the way that we think about all of these efforts, and making sure that when we're making these transformative investments, they're going in the right places, that they're actually supporting the communities that need the help the most. And one of the things that the pandemic has shown us is that public transit in particular is a vital service, and it's a vital service, especially for those who rely on it day in and day out. Because throughout the pandemic, transit agencies across the country have continued to serve customers who need to go to their essential jobs or provide essential services. And those users are often from minority communities. And so, supporting transit more generally and realizing that there are gaps in transit that we need to help fill will, I think, advance and support minority communities and minority businesses as well. So that's just sort of a start for kind of how we're thinking through this stuff.
Great. Well, the country has been talking about upgrading and repairing the country's infrastructure. And this new initiative of the Biden-Harris administration will most very likely help the underserved and unserved community. And we are very pleased to hear that, of course, representing the business community, they know that when transit spreads out across the country, there comes the business opportunity for them as well. We applaud the administration for doing so. How is the Biden-Harris administration and the FTA planning to create jobs and the workforce of the future?
Yeah, I mean, jobs are the centerpiece of the American Jobs Plan. It's in the name, and it's in there for a reason. And it's because we need to make sure that all small businesses, whether they're on main streets or producing innovative products and services, can succeed, and that they have a well-trained workforce to support those businesses and jobs of the future. So here are just a couple of things that sort of the administration more generally is doing, and I'll give you an example of how that sort of translates at the FTA. So one of the features of the American Jobs Plan is a proposal to create a national network of small business incubators and innovation hubs to ensure that everyone has a fair shot at starting and growing their business. And if you target those efforts in underserved communities, you can empower small business job creation and expansion. And that's a tremendous opportunity. In addition, the American Jobs Plan has a call in it for Congress to invest $5 billion in federal programs that empower small firms to participate in federal research and development initiatives that have the potential for commercialization. It was something that I used to work on at the SBA, and this is a massive expansion and a really important step. The way this translates in transit specifically is we have a tremendous opportunity. We talked a little bit about climate change and low and no emission buses, but we have a tremendous opportunity to lead the world in manufacturing the types of low and no emissions technology, whether that's the charging infrastructure or the buses and vehicles themselves. And the American Jobs Plan makes a significant down payment in moving us towards a cleaner bus fleet, but it also recognizes that a critical component of that is making sure that that we have an adequately trained workforce. So there are proposals in the American Jobs Plan to provide the right workforce development and training opportunities so that businesses can really capitalize on the opportunities that are going to be created as we start to transition to a more climate-friendly bus fleet. And that's just one example of where we're going with this.
Yes, and indeed, I've been in this business with the Chamber of Commerce on a full-time basis for 20 years now. And for a long time, the Americans, businesses, large, medium, and small, they are always looking for a well-trained workforce. And now with the digital economy, many changes have come to light now. And we look forward to the President's American Jobs Plan that will open new opportunities, new doors for America's minority. Thank you very much for sharing that. The President also announced that he would want the federal contracts. I say that because you were with the SBA during the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to want the federal contracting offices to increase the spend on minority contractors from 5% to 15%. That is just clear music to our ears. And I think that when the infrastructure plan moves into gear, we will be looking forward to having more minority businesses apply and bid for those opportunities. In terms of the investment now, how do the infrastructure investment in the American Jobs Plan benefit all minorities, particularly those who have traditionally been left behind?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the answer to that is, that when we're investing in infrastructure, we have to think about and public transit is sort of the perfect example of this, but I think it applies more broadly to infrastructure, that if you're making equitable and accessible investments in things like public transit, that's a foundation for breaking down all sorts of barriers and giving individuals and communities the fair chance and full chance to participate in everything our country offers. And if you don't have a car, or if you're in a place that doesn't have access to good public transit, that's a huge impediment to your ability to participate in society, in the economy, in just life. And so transit is, I think, a really critical component of leveling the playing field, whether that's taking people to jobs or schools or social activities, and regardless of whether they have access to a personal vehicle. And for that to happen, I think that these investments, as they unfold, need to be centered around equity and accessibility from the get-go. So you have to integrate those considerations into the decision-making around transit investments early in the planning stage. And the American Jobs Plan helps us to do that by sort of ensuring that throughout the planning process and into development that we are bringing these equity considerations forward. In addition, I'll flag one other thing, which is FTA and other DOT modes have an Office of Civil Rights. And in particular, we're looking forward to working with the administration more broadly on the equity goals, and in working with the transit industry to ensure that public transportation is in particular achieving what it needs to do with respect to its civil rights obligations. And so we're hoping that in the years to come, that things like Title VI and the Americans with Disabilities Act, which our Office of Civil Rights works to enforce, are strengthened, and we can work with transit agencies to really provide those opportunities to those who are traditionally left behind, and we can't leave behind any longer.
Great. Well, I can't let you go off without one more question on climate change. If there's anything else that you would like to talk about the President's Americans Job Plan that support the transit industry's effort to address climate change, is there anything else you want to say before I let you go back to your regular job?
Yeah, sure. I think that, the American Jobs Plan itself is going to invest in electrification infrastructure and buses to get to zero emissions by 2050. And it's part of a broader effort. So earlier this spring, President Biden announced new greenhouse gas targets, including targets for the United States to achieve a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas pollution by 2030. And as part of that, also, he announced the zero emission transit fleet nationwide by 2050. Now, transit plays a really important role in these climate change goals because of two reasons. One is transit itself has this huge opportunity in terms of electrification of our fleets. And the American Jobs Plan makes a substantial investment in that, to the tune of $25 billion being proposed over the next few years to start the transition of transit bus fleets. But more generally, if more people use transit, that means fewer cars on the road and fewer and less pollution from that particular segment of transportation. And so we have an incredible opportunity here. And I mentioned earlier that we put out a low and no emission notice of funding opportunity early in the Biden administration for $180 million to support battery electric and fuel cell powered buses, especially once you combine it with things like workforce development and ensuring that you're targeting those investments in communities that have historically experienced high levels of pollution, really can be transformative. And so we're getting ready to announce in the coming weeks that the grant recipients for that program, and so I think that there is going to be a lot of opportunity to do a lot in this space in the coming years, and we're just getting started. And so, I think generally speaking on climate change, I am hopeful that we are taking big and bold actions to tackle the challenges, but at the same time, those challenges present incredible opportunities to businesses all across the country. Because if we get this right, it is going to be transformative in terms of putting America at the center of manufacturing again, and that will undoubtedly support job creation and small businesses. And so I'll end on that note with a lot of excitement for what's to come.
Great. Well, Subash, America is a place where we have plenty of the American can-do spirit. With the opportunity open to American mainstream and minority communities, I know that we will do well. All we needed is to have that opportunity open to us. Subash, on behalf of the U.S. Pan-Asian American Chamber of Commerce, I want to thank you for giving us good information on the development of the upcoming infrastructure bill. We applaud you and appreciate you for your continued hard work and achievements as Chief Counsel at the Federal Transit Administration. We are pleased with how serious the Biden administration and the Department of Transportation are taking the measures to support the growing Asian and minority business community. It is very important, vital to the mission of the U.S. Pan-Asian American Chamber of Commerce that we see this type of development. USPAACC, that is the acronym for our organization, is dedicated to serving our community and giving them opportunities like this to hear from you, folks like you. Now, I'm proud to say that we have highlighted the last day of our conference with this very important dialogue with Chief Counsel Subash Iyer. I want to thank you again for doing this for us today. I know you're busy. It's hard to peel half an hour from you. Thank you very much, Subash.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. This was great. And thank you all for the work that you do to support Asian American businesses all across the country.
Thank you. Well, come back again, will you?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. All right.
Wonderful. And now it's time to meet a longtime advocate of minority business development that I have known for 20 years through our mutual interest with the Minority Business Development Agency of the U.S. Department of Commerce. The first career senior executive service manager at the MBDA in over 10 years, one of her primary roles is to direct the office which contracts for goods, products, and services and program awards through grants and cooperative agreements for the nationwide network of organizations funded by the MBDA. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet Acting National Director, my good colleague, MBDA's Ms. Edith McLeod. Edith?